Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Crimson Misery podcast. My name is Will Rainbolt. I hope you all are doing well. If you noticed, there was a guitar intro now. That is not by mistake, that is by design. I am going to be experimenting with that for a little bit. I ended up recording that today when I had some time, and yeah, it sounded pretty cool. It sounded a little upbeat for like a metal type intro. Gets people, all excited, I guess, for college basketball, I suppose. Or at least that's what I want it to be. So hopefully you all enjoyed that and weren't too caught off guard with that. I was trying to splice it together at first, and it came out so loud that it was literally unusable. But fortunately, I was able to decrease the volume, so it wasn't gonna harm anyone's ears if they were listening on earbuds or they had their tablet at a high volume. So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to cause anyone's ears to bleed and then I would get sued. But fortunately, that is not going to be the case. So, or at least I hope it isn't the case. Anyway, with that said, yes, that is actually me playing guitar. I am a guitarist. For those who don't know, I don't like to toot my own horn, but um, I was doing a bunch of different riffs and I landed on that one. So hopefully it works for the people watching this, for the fine folks watching this, and if anyone's part of a band or they want to hire me for a gig, just let me know. So anyway, with that being said, if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, consider rating the show 5 stars. If you are listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment down below. And yeah, let's get right into it. We have quite a bit to talk about. Starting on Thursday, oh boy, I got one thing wrong, and that was Ohio State. Ohio State, I was talking you all up. I was trying to make sure like people got the impression of, oh yeah, if UConn ends up playing Ohio State in the NCAA tournament in an 8-9 matchup, then Ohio State would cause some trouble. Oh, not anymore. This is a loss that should kick Ohio State out of the tournament. Losing to a beat up Northwestern team at home by 21 points is horrible. That is horrifying. That is so bad. Yeah, you cannot lose to Northwestern at home by 21 points as a 15-12 team, losing 2 in a row at home, once to Michigan. That could have been a very big resume building victory, and now you lose to Northwestern at home, which is just a terrible loss. I believe that is a quad 2 or maybe even a quad, no, probably not a quad 3, but it's still a bad loss. That should not have happened. Northwestern is literally, they were 13-13 entering this game, and they kicked the crap out of Ohio State. Simple as that. Maryland, however, took care of business, beating USC 88-71. What else can you really say? Julian Reese had another double double. Jacoby Gillespie had 20. Rodney Rice had 22. And USC is just not very good, especially on defense. So that result was not really surprising, at least for me. So, and then not a ton else to talk about. Although I will say San Francisco beating Pacific definitely increases their at-large ability. I think San Francisco should be getting some consideration. However, UC Irvine ended up losing at home to Cal State Northridge, so that definitely hurts them quite a bit. UC San Diego at this point is the favorite to win both the regular season and the conference title, and both teams ended up winning today, which is or yesterday technically, it helps UC Irvine and UC San Diego, but at the same time, I definitely thought UC Irvine was much better than they seem to be, because losing to Cal State Northridge, even though they are 11-4 in the Big West, that cannot happen. Like the loss to UC San Diego, I get, but this is a bad defeat. So definitely hurts UC Irvine, but UC San Diego still rolling strong since they lost to UC Irvine and UC Riverside. So that was Thursday's action, and then Michigan State, they beat Michigan on the road. Big rivalry game. Obviously, this had a lot. I mean, for the Big Ten title race, this was a big game because Michigan State is now 13-3. They're a half game ahead of Michigan. Obviously, with the Purdue game also happening tomorrow or today, technically. I'm going to say today because it's technically Sunday when I'm recording and it's when you all will listen to this podcast. So I should just say today, Sunday. Purdue will be playing Indiana. I will get into that in a little bit. But overall, Michigan, I think, is right on the 4 line. Michigan State, probably a 3 seed. And really, when you look at it, this win isn't as surprising as some people thought it was, especially because Michigan's depth with Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden play a ton of minutes. They looked very tired, especially against Michigan State's front court. They have a lot of depth there, so that was a very big problem for Michigan. Because as talented as Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden are, Golden having 21 points in this one, Danny Wolf having 11, but he also just being a point forward, point center with 8 assists, 7 rebounds, facing teams with more depth than Michigan can definitely be a detriment. And as talented as they are, they can run into some trouble, especially because they face Michigan State again. That could also decide the conference if these teams enter that game with identical conference records. There's still a lot that could happen though, because Michigan State I know still plays Wisconsin. They also, who else do they play? They play someone else that's pretty good. Yeah, at Maryland, at home against Wisconsin. I already went over that, but it could still happen to where the conference gets decided in the final game. So, and then Cohen Carr had some amazing dunks. Again, one of my favorite athletes to watch, especially in Big Ten play. But Jace Richardson, the obvious star here, 21 points. He's going to be a problem in the NCAA tournament. And so people should really keep their eye on him come tournament time. So anyway, Villanova beats Marquette. Marquette, this again, not a loss not a loss you can really afford, especially because the Big East is not very strong. You want to get as many wins as possible, especially on the road, and this is not a good look. So Marquette, I would bet, is probably right now on the 6 line, maybe slowing down to a 7. I could even see it going lower than that if this continues, because the Big East is not strong, and Marquette definitely has had some very questionable losses this year. So, Loyola Chicago, this was a game that I was really keeping an eye on. Loyola Chicago at Dayton, this was at Loyola Chicago, but Dayton ends up losing 76-72. This is a game that Dayton definitely needed to have, but this pretty much eliminates Dayton as an at-large contender right now. But I mean, this team that had such high expectations after the Maui, especially after defeating UConn and Marquette earlier on this year, just has really not played up to where they probably should be with the talent that they have. So definitely a disappointing defeat for Dayton. Yale is now 10-0 in the Ivy League. They pretty much have that conference on lock for the second consecutive year, unless something happens, say Princeton upsets them in the tournament, even though I don't see that happening. So I think it'll be Yale that wins the regular season, and I think they've already clinched the regular season title, but definitely the conference title as well, if I had to guess. Cleveland State defeated Detroit Mercy 73-65, so they are now 13-4 in the Horizon League, and I believe, are they still in first? Yes, they are. They are a half game ahead of Robert Morris, and that is a great segue because Robert Morris defeated none other than Green Bay 94-85. No, Doug Gottlieb did not win 2 games in a row. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. Especially, after he was beefing with LeBron James, uh, claiming that LeBron was punching down on him for making fun of his team being 3-24 at the time. So Doug, I mean, man, you should have had more of a game plan. You should have had your team fired up. You had the offense fired up for 85 points, but Robert Morris just like laid waste to your defense again. So anyway, yeah, Robert Morris wins by 9 points, half game behind Cleveland State for the Horizon League. Not a big surprise. I'll say that much. Uh, Again, I just like extend Doug Gottlieb for 20 years. Anyway, uh, I'm still I hold out hope that I continue making fun of Doug Gottlieb. The thing is with me though, I'll be punching upwards at the very least. So if Doug Gottlieb ever gets mad at me or calls me out, he can't use the you can't use the LeBron argument. So there's that. So anyway, let's go to Saturday where there was a lot that happened. The top teams, the top 6 teams in the AP poll ended up winning today. Auburn defeated Georgia 82-70. This was a very chippy game where Georgia, Auburn was not putting this team away at home until very late in the game. Georgia was definitely the aggressor for a lot of the technical fouls that were called in this one. Chad Baker Mazzara especially was the target of that, and he ended up retaliating and picking up yet another technical. So, but the star, obviously, Janai Broom, 31 points, 14 rebounds, just made everything look so easy. Made everything look as the basket just appeared like it was in front of him every single drive he was taking with little to no resistance by Georgia's front court. It was a clinic that he was putting on, and that is why Auburn is such a dangerous team. Even if they aren't shooting the ball as well, Janai Broom can offset a lot of that, and that is very dangerous for teams that are going to be facing Auburn in the tournament. Likely the number 1 overall seed, and despite what ESPN metrics are saying, with Auburn only having like a 50% chance to have a number 1 seed, like that's ridiculous. They posted that today as well, which, yeah, if you've been keeping up with college basketball, Auburn is like a 90 to 95% chance, and maybe even higher than that for a 1 seed. And Florida as well beats LSU. LSU was up in this one for quite a while, but Florida just went bonkers in the second half. I thought LSU could have a shot, but they are just one of the worst SEC teams this year. And when you're facing a guard combo like Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin, defensively, yes, there is a lot to be desired, but they can put up points. And even when they're not scoring, Ruben Chinyelu had 19, Thomas Howe had 16. So they have secondary scorers. Even when Will Richard isn't scoring, Florida is another team that they can put up points from basically anyone that Todd Golden ends up putting out there. Even a guy like Denzel Aberdeen coming off the bench. So Florida's, again, defensively, yes, they're not great, but especially I should say their front court is pretty good defensively. Their back court is where they definitely have some issues, but overall, another big win for Florida. They're still on the 1 line. Similarly, Duke is also still on the 1 line after they blew the doors off Illinois. in Madison Square Garden. Holy crap, this game was unwatchable from an Illinois perspective because, as I've said before, Illinois shoots a lot of threes and they cash in on about 30% of them, even less so now than that they went 2 of 26 in this game. That's bad. That is 7.7% from 3-point range. Even if you don't watch basketball, you would know that's a pretty bad percentage. 7%. That is incredible. And they've been struggling the last month or so with that because earlier on in the season, they were actually a lot more, at least like they they were never like a fantastic shooting team, but they had games where they would still shoot the lights out. And that team is gone. That team is gone. I don't know what happened, but I mean, Ben Hummerkaus went 0 for 5. Tomislav Visic, despite not being 100%, he hit the first three with like 16 minutes left in the second half. That's bad. Trey White had the other 3-pointer earlier, but later on. But I mean, at that point, Duke just absolutely they used all their starters, and Isaiah Evans hit 3 threes off the bench. Caleb Foster had 12. That this is all despite no Malik Brown either. And Duke went 12 of 23 from 3. Cooper Flagg had some amazing highlights in this one. Con Knipple had just as well. Like, he was scoring at a pretty good clip too. They just looked so much taller and so much stronger than Illinois. Like, Kaspers Yakuchonis looked small in comparison to Con Knipple and Malawach and Proctor and Sion James and Cooper Flagg. Like, they all just seemingly towered over Illinois' entire team. Even guys who are tall like Will Riley just looked overmatched. I mean, this game gave me like UConn vibes from last year. Like, not just Duke playing like UConn did last year, but Illinois when they played UConn in the Elite Eight. UConn went on a 30-0 run. And nothing like was egregious as that, at least in like a singular run. But Duke putting up 110 points is, is certainly not ideal for an Illinois team that needed a win against a pretty good opponent. They're still in the tournament right now, but they are still continuing their free fall because, man, you cannot lose by 43 points. I mean, that's crazy. That is crazy. A 43-point loss. That's one. I think that is the worst loss by scoring margin in Illinois men's basketball history. Like, that is horrific. And yet Illinois, like, they beat Indiana by like seemingly 30 points. I think it was like 25, but still, it seemed like way worse. So, yeah, Illinois is just, again, they are in free fall mode right now. And Alabama comes back after their loss against Missouri, after giving up 110 points as well to the Missouri Tigers. And so our teams are like scoring in bunches recently. Alabama sweeps Kentucky. They beat the Wildcats in Tuscaloosa 96-83. And Mark Sears with another 30-point performance. He had 35 against Missouri, 30 against Kentucky. Kentucky got off to a really big lead. I think Kentucky was up by like 10 or 12 at one point in the first half. They were shooting the ball really well from 3. Alabama's defense yet again wasn't really showing up. But then, like, the last 10 minutes in the first half were actually Alabama playing some pretty solid defense. And you had, again, Mark Sears, Chris Youngblood, Aiden Holloway hit some big threes. And very like again, very much is the case with a team like Michigan State, although maybe not to the same extent as Alabama. I think the Crimson Tide have a little more like actual like stronger depth and more talented depth, but at the same time, even when a guy like Grant Nelson isn't scoring, they can get a guy like Holloway coming off the bench and dropping 19 points. Like you don't know who's going to be scoring like a ton for Alabama on any given night. Even when Mark Sear struggles, it just seems like Jaron Stevenson and Mohamed Diabate and Aiden Holloway, they're all like, or even when Chris Youngblood comes off the bench, like you just don't know who's gonna have a gigantic night because it could be anyone. And again, Kentucky, they need Lamont Butler back because again, even though like yes, Travis Perry has filled in decently, but Lamont Butler is what makes that team work. And yeah, I just don't know what to really make of this Kentucky team right now because they have some really, really good wins. They really do. But they also have at times looked pretty bad. Um, Again, Jackson Robinson as well. That's 20. I mean, well, actually, wait. Let me look. Yeah, so that's 25 points, nearly 26 points between those two guys who are currently hurt, and so get those guys back, add a little depth, then you're looking at a much different team. You're looking at a much better team. But right now, with those two guys not in the lineup right now, Kentucky looks very, very shaky. So that is something to definitely keep an eye on right now. Kentucky, right now, if I had to guess, probably on the 5 line because they've had a lot of losses here recently. So, but we'll see. I mean, if they rack up more wins in the last couple weeks, I could see them easily climbing up. So, and then Houston right now, because again, it's between Houston and Alabama right now for the last one seed. I would give the edge to Houston, but I could see Alabama as well. But right now, Houston with a 23-4 record, 15-1 in the Big 12. I just think they look a little more solid. Alabama's defense, again, giving up 110 points to Missouri is really bad. I know they bounced back, but again, Houston defeated number 8 Iowa State 68-59, despite the Cyclones not having, I believe, Keshawn Gilbert was out for this game, and also Curtis Jones. So give Iowa State some credit. They did at least make the game decently close, especially with Milan Momcilovic having 16 points. He did shoot 2 for 9 from 3 though. But again, Houston, they are so relentless, and especially when LJ Cryer gets his shot going, 28-point performance that really saved Houston in this one because Iowa State was coming back in this one. They were down by 15 in the second half, I believe, and then they made it a game, and they cut it to 5, I believe, and then Houston just kept getting big shots from Cryer, especially, despite not a great performance from Juwan Roberts. Defensively, he did pretty well, but again, Houston just keeps that team is a team really is painful to watch defensively. Not because they're great defensively, obviously, under Calvin Sampson, but it physically hurts because you're just oh my god, they're so physical. And then speaking of which, another game that just made me oh my god, this is relentless defense. Tennessee gets a big win on the road against Texas A&M, who did not have a very good week. Yeah, Texas A&M really did not do themselves any favors by losing by 16 at Mississippi State and then failed to get a big win against Tennessee. They do have some great wins this year, don't get me wrong, but their schedule does not get any easier, especially with Florida and Auburn looming, the top 2 teams in the country right now. So Texas A&M better regroup because it's not getting any easier for them. Especially like Chaz Lanier, 30-point performance, 22 points in the first half. It was a shooting clinic for him, especially when he and Jordan Gainey and Zakai Ziegler, when they are shooting the ball well. Tennessee as a team goes up by tiers I didn't even know were possible in my eyes, because when they're on, Tennessee gets so much better. Their defense gets set more. They're able to take a lot of pressure off their defense, and so they're able to play more together. You saw that especially down the stretch when Texas A&M was making it closer and closer. When Wade Taylor was putting pressure on them, getting to the free throw line a lot. But when he was shooting threes, it was he and Dirk Phelps were 1 for 16 combined, and that's not going to get it done for Texas A&M. So they were struggling against Mississippi State, and they were struggling in this one, and that's the reservation I have for this Texas A&M team. Even though they've played very well at many points this year, it is still just something to keep in the back of your mind, like, well, this can happen because like when you lock up Taylor and Phelps, then Anderson Garcia had a pretty good game. I think he had 10 points in the first half, but I just haven't necessarily been impressed with A&M shooting, and their defense can definitely, like Tennessee, their defense especially is their main calling card, but they're just less talented offensively than Tennessee is, which is kind of wild to say because of who Tennessee has been these last couple of years. But hey, in this case, when you're shooting 8 for 13 from 3, then a lot of good can happen. But Tennessee needs that to keep up from Lanier, especially. Same with Gainey, same with Zakai Ziegler, same with Milicic. They need that happening come tournament time. I think is squarely on the 2 line right now. I think they're one of the top 2 seeds, and should be going up if they're able to win at 9-5 in the SEC. They need to keep winning, but they are certainly. I think currently they are a double bye in the SEC tournament right now because of Missouri's loss, which they lost to Arkansas 92-85. Look, Missouri's defense is not anything to write home about, but Arkansas definitely needed a win like this. I still think they need to do a little more to get into the tournament. I think a lot of teams need to do more to get in the tournament, but yeah, Arkansas definitely spoiling Missouri. Missouri was playing really well. They were leading by 7 at halftime, but Zvonimir Ivisic, Big Z, had a pretty big game with 20 points. Janelle Davis had 18. DJ Wagner at 17. And despite Missouri shooting the ball pretty well in the first half, they finished 12 of 36 from 3, which they're a team that shoots a lot of threes. I get it. They're kind of like BYU in that way, where they take a lot and make quite a few of them, as opposed to like Illinois, who takes a lot of threes and hits none of them. But they definitely they live by the 3, die by the 3, and they definitely died by the 3 in this one. But still, a win over Alabama this week. I think they're still right around the 4 or 5 line. I think they remain like 15th in the AP poll, if I had to assume. But and then not a ton to say about Texas Tech, West Virginia, but Texas Tech gets a big win at home, and West Virginia takes another punch to their tournament resume, even though right now West Virginia is one of the last 4 byes. I would put them maybe in the last 4 in. I would, because the updates haven't happened yet for Joe Lunardi, so I assume he might move West Virginia back a little bit. Same with Wake Forest. He'll definitely move VCU up. Nebraska is still a bit of a mystery, especially after losing at Penn State 89-72, which was definitely not what Nebraska needed. I don't think Nebraska is a tournament team right now. I don't. San Diego State maybe, but especially SMU after losing at home to Clemson, that is a loss they could not have afforded to have. And what I mean by that is that SMU has lost now to Louisville, they have lost to Wake Forest, and they have lost to Clemson. Three of the better teams in the ACC. Same with Duke as well. So actually, looking at it, they've lost to the four best teams in the ACC, and they can't afford that. They really can't, and they're not in the tournament. Like, I'm sorry, SMU, for as well as they've played, they've beaten up on the pretty mediocre to bad ECC teams, and that's not strong enough for a tournament bid. They definitely needed to pick off a game against Wake Forest or the game against Clemson, and they did not do that. And as a team already in the first four out, they are definitely still descending. North Carolina did win, however, against Virginia, so I still think they're probably in the first four out. I would, even as an Indiana fan, I would argue Indiana's resume is a little bit stronger than North Carolina's because I think they have more quad one wins than North Carolina, and they don't have like a quad 3 or 4 loss. And I think Carolina has one against, who was it? Who did they lose to? That was a really bad loss. Was it? I think it was. Was it Pitt? Is it Pitt? Yeah, or maybe I'm thinking like quad 2 or 3. Maybe I'm thinking quad 2, or maybe it was Stanford. Either one of those, because they've definitely, kind of like I was saying with SMU, even though they did beat SMU, so North Carolina has that over them. But it's kind of the similar thing where they really haven't beaten teams like Pitt or Clemson, or I mean they did, or Wake Forest for that matter. So they really needed to have some wins like that. They have I think they need to win out. North Carolina does, in order to be in the tournament. I think you win your last four. That includes Duke. I think North Carolina gets in, but I really they if they lose to Duke, I think they need to win like 2 ACC games to even have a shot. But because the resume is not strong for Carolina. The bubble is very weak, so we'll see. But I just don't know if Carolina really is. It would help them, obviously, if teams like Oklahoma and Indiana were to lose. Oklahoma did end up winning against I mentioned them before, Mississippi State, 93-87. So that definitely helped Oklahoma. That definitely hurt some other bubble teams, but Jeremiah Fears, another really great game, 27 points. Mississippi State, though, they're just so inconsistent overall. They're such a wild card. Mississippi State is truly a team that I just don't know what to expect from. Right now, I would have them as a 7 seed, maybe an 8, if the season were to end today. But again, they have a lot of really good wins, but also they've had some losses that have not helped them. They haven't really lost to anyone bad, but at the same time, their losses are very, very questionable in some instances. Like they lost to Missouri at home by 27 points. So, and then they just lost to Oklahoma, who's kind of on the bubble right now. But one of the worst teams, the worst team in the SEC, South Carolina, just beat a bubble team in Texas right now, because Texas, one of the last 4 byes, they are going right back to the last 4 in, or slipping below. I mean, there were a lot of bubble teams that lost, especially Texas at South Carolina, which is a loss that is very inexcusable. Like, I'm sorry, Texas, after beating Kentucky, you can't have a loss like that to South Carolina. You just can't. They've lost 4 of 5, and despite Trey Johnson being really good, that's not a great look for Texas. So, I mean, I would Texas would be lucky to remain in the field right now, especially in the last four in. Vanderbilt definitely moving to the last four byes after beating Ole Miss. It was a very seesaw type battle, but they ended up beating Ole Miss 77-72. A game they definitely needed to win. Uh, that's that really is just a team where, again, like Mississippi State, Ole Miss, I don't really know what to expect, but because they're almost kind of the same team in a way, where I just don't know what to expect from them on a night to night, on a game to game basis. But they played well on the road. Vanderbilt's a tough place to play. Sean Padula had 21, Malik Dia had 22. Um, but I really, especially after coming back, they really just ran out of gas in the second half. So Vanderbilt, again, another really big win for them. I really don't know what to expect, but Mark Byington has that team playing pretty well on for a team that really didn't have a ton of expectations. So Vanderbilt is definitely moving, especially with I think all four of the last four byes losing. I mean, Nebraska lost earlier this week. San Diego State, I believe, lost. Yeah, San Diego State lost to Utah State, 79-71. So they are going to be slipping a little bit more. That definitely hurts them because the Mountain West, aside from Utah State and New Mexico, don't really have a ton of strong teams. Boise State would be another one. Colorado State is definitely mediocre, I think, when it comes to the overall field, but better when it comes to the Mountain West this year. And yeah, West Virginia lost, and then yeah. So Vanderbilt definitely is eclipsing those four teams, especially when you have a team like Texas who lost to South Carolina. So and same thing for Arkansas. VCU also in the Mountain West race, or not Mountain West, Atlantic 10. Why I was like so focused on the Mountain West, I like forgot I was switching conferences. In the Atlantic 10, VCU defeated George Mason, and in a game where defense pretty much ruled the day. George Mason was leading at halftime by a score of it was 24-23. It was another defensive struggle, but Max Shulga had 22 points, and especially a lot of them came in the second half. And VCU ended up pulling away, beating George Mason by 16. I said this on Twitter, but I said that both George Mason and VCU deserve to be in the tournament. That might be a bit of a hot take, especially because George Mason's defensive efficiency is definitely going down after this one, and their offense isn't really all that good. But I think, like overall, I think the Atlantic 10 is definitely an interesting conference because to me, like despite there are a lot of quad 2 teams in the Atlantic 10, and like especially teams like Rhode Island and St. Louis and St. Bonaventure and teetering on quad 1 but still mainly in quad 2, Dayton, Loyola, Chicago. In George Mason, for the most part, aside from a loss to Rhode Island, has played pretty well. I mean, being 12-2 in the conference, so tied with VCU. I think if the two teams definitely win most of their games and make it far, make it say to the final, A10 final, like I think both teams could be in the NCAA tournament. But we'll see. There's still a lot of basketball to be played, and it could be just one of them making the tournament. If I had to say a team, probably right now VCU would be that team, especially after literally having the tiebreaker to George Mason. So big win for VCU. They're another team that is again in the last four in and will certainly be climbing. But Wake Forest did not do themselves any favors losing to NC State, so they are definitely going to be slipping out. I don't think Wake Forest is an NCAA tournament team right now, but yeah, they're again kind of like with SMU, kind of like with North Carolina. I would put the ACC bubble teams out of it currently. So, and then Pittsburgh and the next were out. Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not seeing that one. I'm like, sorry, Pitt fans, if you are listening. I nothing against your team. I just don't see it. So, but Louisville did pick up a win against Florida State. 14-2 now in the ACC, tied with Clemson for second in the conference right now. But Louisville did beat Clemson earlier this year, so I think they'd be the 2 seed, being 25th in the rankings right now. And Clemson is 18th because they have a win over Duke. But right now, Louisville still looks like they're going to be climbing. Kansas got a big win against a bad Oklahoma State team, 96-64. They looked good. David Quaid made some big shots. Hunter Dickinson had a double-double. I don't really care. Like, beat an actual basketball team, and then I'll start to pay attention. Like, yes, winning by 32 points is cool, but Kansas, like, literally lost by like 34 to BYU on the road. I'll get to BYU what they did against Arizona a bit, but again, win at Colorado and then play well against Houston and Arizona, and I will reassess what I think about this Kansas team. But right now, again, Kansas is super inconsistent. Winning at home against Oklahoma State is really nothing to write home about. Like, I'm sorry, but that just is my like overall feeling that Kansas is still a team that has so many issues, and they definitely masked a lot of them in this game, especially because, like I said, Oklahoma State is not a good basketball team. But yeah, again, prove me wrong by at least playing well against Colorado and Houston on the road, and then Arizona at home. I didn't even get to this one. I kind of glossed over it, but Oregon came back from, I believe, like 17 down in the second half against Wisconsin. Um, wow, this was a choke by Wisconsin because they had this game, and for some reason, Greg Gard was very just nonchalant about his timeout usage, especially in the second half and overtime. And I just didn't really see much urgency from him. It was almost like he was acting that Wisconsin was just going to win this game automatically, and then they were not like able to get the ball in bounds, and then Oregon ended up having a big three from Jackson Shellstad, who I've definitely look. I haven't enjoyed watching Oregon's guards for a lot of the year, especially lately in Big Ten play, but he came up clutch there, and Oregon just kept chipping away. Nate Biddle was, for quite a bit of the game, he was just bullying Stephen Crowell and Nolan Winter down low. When teams have an opposing center that can really like make living life a living hell for Wisconsin's forwards, they are very vulnerable because John Blackwell did not have a very good game. You had Max Klesmit, who took like one of the worst shots that I could have possibly imagined to try to win the game. I don't understand what they were doing there. John Tanjay was 2 of 10 from 3. He had 22 points, but even still, it was definitely an off night shooting the basketball. But again, despite having a 17-point lead, they just allowed Oregon, who is a lot of the time looked very lackadaisical on offense. They just allowed Oregon to get whatever they wanted, especially with Nate Biddle. I still don't know what to make of Oregon, but that was a really good win. This was a great comeback win for Oregon. And for Wisconsin, especially after defeating Illinois at home, I thought this would be another game that they would kind of coast along, especially when they were up 17. I was like, yeah, Wisconsin has this game. No, they did not. So Yeah, Wisconsin is it's like I was seeing a lot of this on Twitter. Like I was seeing this take where it was like um, Greg Gard. We all know that he's like he takes teams that don't have a ton of expectations, gets off to really hot starts, gets into like the top four, top four seeds earlier on in the season, like projected wise, and then they just fall off. And like especially after defeating Purdue and Illinois, like I thought, okay, maybe Wisconsin is like legitimately going to be like really really good come tournament time. And now I'm just not sure. Like game by game, you just never know what's going to happen. And Wisconsin is one of those teams that it'll be an interesting test, especially when Wisconsin plays Michigan State. That game I think will decide a lot. That game will be on CBS on the 2nd of March. I think that game will prove very, especially when it comes to the eye test, how Michigan State's forward and center depth will be able to play against Nolan Winter and Stephen Crowell. I'll be interested to see what ends up happening with that one. I think that will be the game that really will be indicative of what Wisconsin does in the tournament. Because if they lay another egg like they did, or if they choke like they did against Oregon, I'd really be concerned if I'm a Wisconsin fan right now. But like I was saying with Greg Gard, it's like he always has these like late season collapses. Like even if he gets a high seed, he's been known to have less than stellar performances in the NCAA tournament. Like I don't think Wisconsin has made the Sweet 16 since 20, what was it, 2016? Is that right? Um, now I'm kind of curious. But again, like I've always I've never really known in my time watching college basketball, or at least since Greg Gard has been coaching. Yeah, he has not made. No, it's 2017. Sorry, 2017. That was against. Yeah, that's right. They beat Villanova and then they lost to Florida in the Sweet 16 in 2017. Okay, so he made back-to-back Sweet 16s after taking over for Bo Ryan, but since then he has not made the second weekend. That has been 8 seasons now. Well, 7 seasons and possibly an 8th season, but we'll see what ends up happening to them later on down the stretch. All right. Speaking of games that were very very interesting to watch, BYU gets a massive road win over Arizona, 96-95. So after BYU beats Kansas by 34 points, they beat Arizona in a thriller, 96-95. Unfortunately, the game was kind of ruined by a phantom foul call that was not it was not a foul. Richie Saunders was driving in and kind of like stopped after being hounded by Trey Townsend, kind of like forced up a very bad shot, but got bailed out because like you could see Townsend like kind of move his hips towards Saunders when he was taking the shot, but he still I've seen way more egregious stuff not get called. So again, Arizona was up by one at that point, 95-94. Which yeah, Arizona scoring over 90 points and losing is crazy, by the way. Like Arizona does not score over 90 very often. Like they are very defensive oriented, but again, BYU shoots a lot of threes. They have quick possessions. And Arizona had to try to match that to win this one. They won earlier at BYU, believe it or not, but damn, BYU from like last four buys earlier this week to now just being like completely off the bubble. Crazy. That's really insane. That being said, there were quite a few calls against BYU that were pretty egregious too. Like Arizona was getting to the line quite a bit, 21 for 25 compared to just 10 of 14 for BYU. But at the same time, I get it. Like, I mean, you really should make that call. Like Arizona, in that sense, got pretty screwed over. Um, but shooting wise, like BYU 14 of 31 from three. Um, Cannon Catchings had went 4 for 6 off the bench. He had I think he had three threes in the second half. That really, it was a back and like it was. I don't think any team, at least when I was watching, had a lead higher than like 5 points. And I mean that was really just. I mean, it was so close, and I mean, Saunders had 23. Mewat Malik had 11 points. Kiba Kita had 10. He had some big shots around the rim. Arizona's interior defense definitely let up quite a bit, especially against a BYU team that shoots a lot. Like being able to space the floor and making Arizona's forwards like Henry Vesar come out and try to guard, and then being able to isolate him with Keto one on one. That definitely led to some big shots. And yeah, BYU again shot the lights out. Caleb Love had a pretty solid game overall. Hit what seemingly were the and probably should have been the game-winning free throws. He went 9 of 10 overall from the free throw line, at 27 points. Hit some big threes in the second half. Caleb Love was finally playing like really well, but then like at the last possession that Arizona had after that terrible foul call, he like threw the ball like right. Arizona did this a couple times, especially with Carter Bryant. Like they were throwing these like Hail Mary passes when they really did not need to. And it was so weird. Um like they could have gotten just a simple pass, like a couple dribbles. You still had 3 seconds left. And I don't know what really the plan was with a Hail Mary pass, because you really didn't need it down by one. Um, but yeah, great. Look, in spite of that, it was a great game. I don't want that thing, and especially because after the final buzzer, there was a lot of chippiness, and the players got. I think it was like Caleb Love, and I forget who he was shouting at, but for BYU, but there were some tempers that did flare at mid court when they were supposed to be in the shake hands line. So no love lost between those two programs, that's for sure. But again, BYU right now, I would say, is probably about an 8-9 seed right now, and Arizona. I think Arizona is still a bit higher than they should be. I would have them as maybe a 6 or 7 seed at this current moment. But if they beat Kansas on the road, that'd be incredible. But until that has happened, they also play at Iowa State, so we'll see. There's still a lot to be decided. That will undoubtedly have a ton of say in seeding, and especially in the Big 12 tournament. That's going to decide a lot. So, with that being said, I'm going to look at some more games that definitely have some tournament impact, and then focus on a little more women's basketball, and especially talking about Indiana in both instances. Because, man, tomorrow's going to be definitely it's going to be a Hoosier watching day for sure. Norfolk State is now 9-1 in the MEAC after defeating Coppin State 79-63. I think Lenardi has them as a 15 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, as a 15, playing Wisconsin as a 2 seed. They are definitely not a 2 seed after their game against Oregon. So that's definitely going to change. And so, but again, like Norfolk State pretty much has that conference on lock. So at the same time, I've already talked about the Big West. I think UC San Diego, in their first year of tournament eligibility, looking pretty good right now. So we'll see. Bradley is now trying to keep pace with Drake in the Missouri Valley, beating Murray State in overtime. 85-83. They had a buzzer beater to win this one. So another big win for them. I believe Drake plays tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And That's going to be another big game to watch, especially when it comes to the Missouri Valley Conference. They need to stay in front of Bradley, who's still trying to make some noise. But God, even Baylor losing on the road to Colorado, 76-74. Like, I just don't know what to make of Baylor, man. They lost at home to Arizona and now on the road to Colorado. It's just like their tournament hopes are slipping away. So maybe expect them to be on the bubble. If I don't even know if they're even in consideration. Actually, let me look really quickly where Lenardi has them. Yeah, Baylor. He has Baylor as a 9 seed. That's definitely changing. That definitely hurt Baylor quite a bit. So again, like UConn did with Seton Hall, and like with Texas to South Carolina, you just can't have those kinds of losses. Those are inexcusable. So yeah, definitely not a great outcome there. But then tomorrow on Sunday, the women's team for Indiana plays at Michigan State. They did beat Ohio State, beat Ohio State quite handily at home, so that really improved their tournament resume. I would love to see them win at Michigan State, but I don't think that's going to happen. Unfortunately, Michigan State has caused Indiana some problems in recent years, so they're just a difficult team to play. I'm not sure they'll be able to win that one. So, but then, yeah, Indiana also plays Purdue on CBS at 1:30. Indiana, this is your time. You're still in consideration for the tournament. You are in a bubble field that is not strong. You are in the next four out. Let's see. You have Purdue. You have a great opportunity to beat your rivals and to improve your tournament resume by getting another quad one win. You play Penn State at home, a team you have already beaten. You play at Washington, a team who is very mediocre in the Big Ten. Oregon, not expecting to win that one, but you have Ohio State at home. You go 4-1 in your last 5 games. That improves your tournament resume so much. There's still a chance. There's still a sliver of an opportunity, despite that 5-game losing streak. That was not great. You have a shot, man. You have a shot. And it's just like, if they lose to Purdue, it's basically over. Because even if they beat Penn State and Washington and Ohio State after that, like, it's not enough. You have to beat Purdue. You have to. You have to. You played well against them on the road. Come on. Like, you could have had a shot to win it in the final seconds had Miles Rice actually, like, made a good play and tried to set up Umar Ballo in a much better way than whatever the hell he did, tried to lob it to nobody. This is your opportunity. Come on, let's do this. Let's go Hoosiers. Come on. Please. I just want come on. For once, you know? For once. I know they've beaten Purdue before, but like, you know, this year anyway. I just want it to happen. Anyway, Memphis also plays Florida Atlantic. They definitely need to keep ahead in the American, especially with UAB behind them, especially with North Texas behind them. Green Bay plays again against Youngstown State. So come on, Doug Gottlieb, get that victory, man. Get that victory. Ohio State plays at UCLA. This is a big bubble game for especially Ohio State now. UCLA squarely in the tournament right now, but Ohio State definitely needs a bounce back game against UCLA. And then, yeah, Drake plays at Northern Iowa. Definitely need to keep that. Definitely need to keep up because Bradley is not going away as they've shown. So, and then as for the women's side, Notre Dame is at NC State tomorrow. That's going to be a very big game in the ACC. Notre Dame number 1, NC State 13th. That's a game to watch. Will Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo come through, or will NC State pull off the upset? We shall see. And then Purdue at Ohio State. Ohio State, after losing to Indiana, should be able to take care of a pretty bad Purdue team. I wouldn't be surprised if if this is her swan song, but we'll see on that front. UCLA is at Iowa. That is a very interesting game because, as you know, Iowa has already beaten USC at home. So can they make that 2 wins against the California-based teams? I think Lucy Olson is going to have a really big game, but it'll depend on how. Unless I am messing up there. Hold on 1 second. This is great podcasting. They need Hannah Stulke and Addison O'Grady to have really big games, because if not, they're gonna allow Lauren Betts to just stomp them to bits. So that's going to be a very interesting game to watch. Same with North Carolina at Louisville. North Carolina number 9 in the country, but going on the road against Louisville is not going to be easy. So that's another game to watch. I've already talked about Indiana going to Michigan State, South Carolina at Vanderbilt. Look, as much as I want Vanderbilt to win, they're not going to beat South Carolina. South Carolina is still going to be playing pissed off after losing to UConn. They crushed Arkansas by 40 points, I think. They were up big time against Arkansas. So not expecting a win from Vanderbilt, but we'll see. We'll see. And then Illinois, speaking of USC, Illinois at USC. Yeah, sorry, Illinois, you have no shot against USC. I'm sorry. But LSU at Kentucky is going to be a very interesting game. Kentucky with Georgia Amore, of course, are going to be looking to get a big win against LSU. It's tough for me to say like go Kentucky, but I hate Kim Mulkey that much. So go Kentucky, go Wildcats, go Big Blue. Nobody clip that audio, please. So anyway, yeah. With that being said, I think that'll do it. Yeah, I think that'll do it for now. Feeling kind of tired. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on the games today. Big week for the bubble, obviously. It's going to continue to be like that, of course. So make sure you're keeping an eye out on your bracketology. Make sure that you're still keeping up with everything college basketball related. Thanks again so much for listening. And hopefully you all enjoyed the the music intro. Hopefully that'll stick around. And yeah, thanks again for watching. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.